This morning, I'm one-on-one with City Council Speaker Corey Johnson. One of the most powerful people in city government, he steers the direction of city legislation. His latest effort, bird-friendly glass on new buildings, and $1 million to deal with a hunger crisis among students.
Now from 42nd and 2nd, this is New York's very own Pix 11 News Closeup with Marvin Scott.
Good morning. It's been a busy few months for the New York City Council. They've tackled a myriad of issues and passed legislation that will bring about dramatic changes in the city, including a plan to reduce the number of cars on our streets. Now, the council is dealing with other issues, including a plan to save more than 200,000 birds that are killed each and every year by flying into glass windows. At the helm of the council, who helps steer the direction of new laws, is its speaker, Corey Johnson, who I'm pleased to welcome back to Pix 11 News Close-Up. Good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Marvin.
Before I get into some local issues, I want to talk about this terrible story this week of the shooting in Jersey City, the mass shooting. It has been declared a hate crime against the Jewish people. This comes in light of the spike in anti-Semitic incidents here in the city. How is the city responding to this?
You know, there has been, as you just mentioned, an appalling, dramatic, explosive rise in anti-Semitic attacks all across New York City, at synagogues, on the subway, people being attacked in Borough Park or Williamsburg. And the answers aren't easy. And what I mean by that is we need to prevent these hate crimes before they actually happen. When they do happen, we need to bring these people to justice who commit these crimes. But before they happen, what do? The New York City Council passed a bill earlier this year creating an office called the Office of Hate Crime Prevention. And that bill set up an office to go around the city and work in communities on letting people know about their rights, but also trying to create more understanding between people with different backgrounds. The head of the new office is a woman named Deborah Lauder, who is a former executive at the Anti-Defamation League here in New York City. But what we saw in Jersey City has been a culmination of a sharp, dramatic rise in these anti-Semitic attacks and incidents all across New York City. And we're really proud that the greatest city in the world has the largest Jewish population outside the state of Israel. And the thing that makes New York City the greatest is how diverse of a city that we are. And there's no place for anti-Semitism, and there's no place for attacking people because of their background, race, religion, heritage, sexual orientation. And that's what we need to focus on. Part of what I think we need to do is we need to actually give young people the education on the civil rights movement, on the Holocaust, on these things, because we know that hate is not something that is innate. It is something that young people learn.
Now I see the NYPD has formed a special unit to deal with extremist hate crimes. So that has come about as an aftermath to all of this, and they have several members of the intelligence unit working on that. Let's shift gears, talking about, I know your focus on your laws are on the people, on the residents of New York, but this past week you were dealing with the birds. You say that something like over 230,000 birds are killed each year by flying into buildings, and you want to change that. What's the council done?
We passed a bill earlier this week that is going to require, not for existing buildings, but new buildings or buildings that undergo a significant renovation, to use a type of glass that's called bird-friendly glass. And it's glass that birds won't have a collision with, because the Audubon Society estimates that somewhere between 90,000 and 230,000 birds are killed every year from glass strikes, where birds cannot see what's actually happening, and they think they're flying into a tree because of reflection off the glass that looks like a tree, and instead they collide and they end up dead on the sidewalk. The New York Times had a story just a few months ago that showed that over 1 billion birds are dying across the world. It is an environmental crisis. It goes into the climate catastrophe that our city, state, country, and world world is facing. And if there's a way to build buildings that are more bird friendly, where you're not going to have these collisions, we are looking to do that. And this legislation is going to require it for the first 75 feet of the building.
And this will be glass that's either glazed or has a pattern on it. Now, this is going to drive up the costly as it is right now for construction in New York, to drive the cost up even more. And how will this fit into the mayor's proposal, a part of his Green Deal, that will eliminate glass and steel from new construction?
Well, I can't speak to the mayor's proposal because I haven't seen a real proposal on that. But I would say that Toronto just passed a similar bill on bird-friendly glass. We believe that other cities across the United States, large cities, are going to follow our path because they've been contemplating it. And there are some glass manufacturers that already manufacture this glass. We think the more cities that participate, the cost will be driven down, and so it's not going to increase construction costs substantially. And there are other things you can do besides just having very transparent glass. You can frit the glass, you can decal the glass, you can do other things that are not nearly as expensive as just using the glass. And so we think this is a step in the right direction.
Let me move on to another area. It's something that it's really hard to believe in a city like New York, that there are students in our schools who are going hungry every day. And you just worked and approved, I believe, a pilot program, $1 million pilot program to help hungry students who are attending the 7 CUNY schools in our city. What is that all about?
Well, out of the 8.6 million people who live in New York City, more than 1 million are food insecure, going hungry every single day. And when we drilled down on that data, we found out that so many of them were actually CUNY students, students that come from working class or working poor or families that are not wealthy, that when they go to school, not as a rite of passage, but they are literally trying to survive off of bowls of ramen and skipping meals. And we want to actually prepare young people to be successful in higher education. So we announced over $1 million pilot program with the City University of New York and all of their campuses on feeding hungry students, helping them so they can be set up for success and leave higher education, entering the workforce with good grades and being well prepared. A lot of these students, Marvin, are students that actually have a family already. They're not students that are right out of high school.
But families with an income averaging about $15,000. And I think this pilot program will cover for about 1,200 students.
Yes.
And like, what, $400 each?
$400 each, and it's going to help them get meals every single day, every single week in cafeterias. It's going to give them a card. And we believe that food is a human right. Access to food is a human right. And in one of the richest cities in the world, we do not want people going hungry.
Okay, I want to take a break. And when we come back, I mean, the city's already banned styrofoam, banned plastic. And now you want to do away with those receipts we get in the department stores. No more paper receipts. We'll hear from Speaker Johnson when we come back.
You're watching New York's very own Pix 11 News Closeup with Marvin Scott.
Back now with City Council Speaker Corey Johnson and very busy sessions at the council. Previously, the council has banned a ban on plastic, a ban on styrofoam, foie gras. Now you want to ban those paper receipts we get when we go shopping.
Not ban them. Not ban them. So, you know,
eliminate them.
How many folks have gone to Duane Reade and you buy, you know, 1 or 2 things, and the receipt that comes out is as wide as the table that we're sitting at right now. It's literally sometimes 2 feet long. And what we're saying is it's a huge amount of waste and it might be unnecessary. And those receipts, 95% of them are coated with a chemical material called BPA, which is actually very, very bad for our endocrine system. And so we're saying that we want to get rid of receipts that are coated with that chemical. If people do want a paper receipt, they can choose to have one. But a lot of people, when you ask them, do you need a receipt before they actually print it, they say no. So why don't you ask first? And number 2, some people now prefer to get their paper receipts digitally, where you could actually have your receipt emailed to you instead of actually having them printed out. So if people still want their paper receipts, they can get them without the coated material. They could have the choice to have it emailed to them, or it might not be printed at all if they don't want it. We are in an environmental crisis. Every little thing that we do matters. A lot of these receipts, they get printed out, people throw them in the trash right away. A lot of people don't keep their receipts. Some people do. So we're trying to figure out ways to disincentivize this unnecessary printing of receipts. When people want it, they can have it. And we want to get rid of this chemical, BPA, which coats these receipts, and scientists have found can have a really bad effect on pregnant women, on people with already health illnesses. People don't know this, that these receipts are coated, and when you touch them, it could actually affect your biochemistry. So we want to get rid of that chemical and not print these receipts if it's unnecessary.
Protect the environment and protect our hands and our body.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
All right. What next in the ban? What's on the horizon?
I don't know. I mean, I think there might be, we're not going to ban them, but I think there might be too many helicopter flights over New York City.
I know that's a big issue. And what is the council considering that? Because a lot of people have been complaining about these flights from Manhattan to Kennedy Airport.
Well, one of the big issues has actually been that so many of the flights that are coming over Manhattan, going over Central Park, going over residential neighborhoods, are flights that are actually taking off from New Jersey. And so the city doesn't have much leverage or say there. We need to actually have the FAA look into this, which is a federal agency. And the city has actually reined in a lot of these tourist flights. We might need to go further.
I want to talk about something which is a travesty in your district in Hell's Kitchen. There's a building there that houses seniors.
Yes.
And now the landlord wants them to leave because he sold the building. Before you talk about that, Monica Morales did a story on it this week on the Pix 11 News at 10. Take a look.
Joel Riff has lived here at the Riverview Assisted Living Facility in Hell's Kitchen since 2018. He says he was told by management his building was being put up for sale next year. Riff says he worries not just for himself, but for the 30 elderly residents who live here.
These are people, including me, who need help, who are at a loss, who can't afford to pay for expensive lawyers.
Riff says his heart breaks, especially for his neighbor. She is 99 years old and a Holocaust survivor.
My parents were Holocaust survivors, so I can understand some of what her life experience was. And to see it be caught up in something like this is tragic.
We tried to talk to management Thursday afternoon. Our cameras were not allowed inside the building. The group that runs the facility, a nonprofit organization called the Institute for Children and Poverty Foundation.
It's a housing crisis that we've not seen in New York City since the Great Depression.
Since the news of the possible eviction broke, Riff says he's gotten some powerful new political allies like State Senator Brad Hoylman, City Council Speaker Corey Johnson, Borough President Gail Brewer, and Assemblymember Linda Rosenthal. Senator Hoylman says he is now demanding a meeting with management to reconsider.
It's particularly cruel given this time of year, the holidays, and to have a notice slipped under your door that the building may be sold, you're a senior, and you've got 3 months to get out. That's really cruel.
And Thursday afternoon, Riff says he met with members of the State Attorney General Letitia James's office. He's hopeful all the media attention and political muscle will help save his home.
I think it's fantastic.
All right, thanks to Monica for that report. Now, you've accused the landlord of giving these seniors being evicted a lump of coal. What are you doing about it?
Well, I reached out to the Attorney General, Letitia James, the other day when this news was breaking, and she personally got on the phone and said, anything we can do to be helpful to these folks, we're going to swoop in right away and see what their rights are. You know, it would be cruel any time of year to do this to 30 or more vulnerable seniors, but at this time of year, the holiday season, it's particularly cruel to slip a vague notice under their doors saying your home of years is going to be sold and gone from you. As Mr. Riff mentioned in Monica's piece, one of the people who lives there is a 99-year-old Holocaust survivor. And this organization is a nonprofit organization that is looking to sell this building in the heart of Hell's Kitchen. What they should do is sell it to another nonprofit housing developer who would agree to keep these people in their homes. The elected officials that were mentioned in the piece are going to fight tooth and nail to protect these seniors from being evicted later this year, pushed out of their homes, and we are looking at every potential option that's on the table.
Is it possible the city could purchase it?
That is one thing we're potentially looking at is could we work with the Attorney General's office to get the current owner to sell it to either the city or to sell it to another nonprofit housing provider. Maybe the city could potentially come up with capital money to help with that sale, but we want to protect these 31 seniors. There is a lack of affordable housing generally in New York City, and especially for senior citizens. We need to hold on to affordable housing for seniors in New York.
So in this story, stay tuned.
Yes.
You're working on it. You're on the case. Okay. Let's take a break. And then we'll come back. I had a lot more questions for City Council Speaker Corey Johnson. Stay with us.
You're watching New York's very own Pix 11 News Closeup with Marvin Scott.
Back now with City Council Speaker Corey Johnson. So much to talk about. Let's talk about one of the major issues and problems with the city, homelessness.
Yes.
We have so many people who are in shelters, so many on the streets.
Yes.
The mayor has an assistance program, which I have read. He is sending homeless people out of town, as far as Puerto Rico, some to Hawaii, many to Newark. And this has cost the city $89 million in the past couple of years. Do you support that?
Well, I think that it is a Band-Aid, and a Band-Aid that doesn't go to the heart of the wider issue on homelessness. Most New Yorkers, when they see homelessness, they see it on the streets of New York City, on the subways. They see people who are vulnerable, who are in some instances decompensating before our very eyes, and really, really need help. That's about 6,000 people that are living unsheltered on the streets or subways of New York City. But the wider population is about 79,000 New Yorkers that are in city-run shelters. 79,000, 25,000 of whom are children under the age of 18 years old. And so what do we need to do? We need to build affordable housing in New York City. Construction costs are high. That's a problem. There's a lack of land. That's a problem, but we need to actually ensure that developers build this housing. Instead of large glass luxury buildings, they need to build affordable housing. So the City Council, before the end of this year, Marvin, is going to pass a bill that is going to require that 15% of the units in buildings that the city helps subsidize, as we give money to build the buildings for affordable housing, 15% of the units are going to be set aside for homeless families and individuals. We need to bring that 79,000 number down. The way to do that is not shipping people to Hawaii or Puerto Rico or to Newark. That is not a long-term solution. That is a temporary fix, a quick Band-Aid. And a lot of these people want to live in New York City. They lived here their entire lives. They had a health emergency. They got evicted from their apartment because they lost their job. They have children that have gone to school here. We need to have better solutions. Increase rental assistance vouchers for people that are trying to get out of shelters, increase the production of units targeted towards homeless individuals and families. Those are the things that I think we need to do.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Yes.
Are you still vaping?
I am still vaping. I'm off cigarettes for 7 months, which is a huge accomplishment. I was a pack-a-day smoker for 10 and a half years. Quitting smoking was harder for me than getting sober. I'm sober since July 13th, 2009, my biggest accomplishment. And eventually, I'm going to work towards being entirely nicotine-free. And it's hard. It's hard. My biggest thing is I wish I never, ever, ever started smoking. It's one of my biggest regrets and mistakes
So now
in
you
life.
do, but your very council has put a ban out on,
Yes.
on these e-cigarettes.
Yes.
And I think I read somewhere that you're thinking of running the marathon next year. That
Well-
running helps you?
Well, that's what I did initially. I quit about 9 years ago, and I quit for a year. And the way I quit was by running the marathon and training for the marathon, and that's how I stay quit. But the reason why we did this is because even though it may help someone like me, the issue is the significant increase and explosion of vaping among teenagers has been dramatic.
We've had 50 deaths, 2 of them here in New York.
But it's important to be clear, most of those deaths are actually from THC products coated with vitamin E, not the traditional products that we're talking about. The real reason here is that young people are getting hooked on nicotine. And for young people that get hooked on nicotine through vaping, that could potentially be a gateway into smoking traditional cigarettes. For adults, it might be the opposite way. But when you have to weigh these things, the weight has to be on how do we prevent all of these young people, these teenagers, 13 years old, 14 years old, 15 years old, from getting hooked on nicotine at a very young age. There's been deceptive advertising to them from these vaping companies, and that is the reason why we made this decision, becoming the largest city in the United States of America, to take this step.
All right, talking about smoking, where do you stand on the efforts in Albany to legalize recreational marijuana?
You know, I think that we should regulate marijuana, we should tax marijuana, we should figure out a regulatory system for marijuana, because marijuana is legal to smoke in New York City if you're white. And if you're not white, it's not legal. So when you look at the numbers of who smokes marijuana, it's actually equal among race groups. But when you look at the numbers of who gets arrested, sent to Rikers Island, gets a criminal record, it's predominantly young black and brown men. And so do I like being around marijuana smoke? No. The bill to legalize marijuana would only say that you could smoke inside your home. You couldn't be lighting up on the streets of New York City. And so that is a key thing that people need to know. With the criminalization of young people for smoking it, I think you set up a regulatory system, you use that money that you get from taxes to put in the subways, put in education, put in drug treatment programs, instead of going after this drug that we know is being smoked. And it's time to figure out a logical and rational way to deal with it.
Okay, another personal question.
Okay.
When are you going to announce your candidacy for mayor?
Well, you know, I have been fundraising. I have every intention of running. I'm not playing coy about that. But I think that both myself and the other good people that are considering running for mayor are probably going to wait until after the presidential election is over, because the country and the city is focused on what's going to happen in November of 2020, what's going to happen during these primaries. I just want to beat Donald Trump is what I want to do. And after that, hopefully gets done, then we'll have a real announcement.
So let me ask you this hypothetical question. How might New York be different under a Corey Johnson mayoralty?
Well, I think we have to focus on a few things. Number one, we have an affordability crisis that is gripping New York City. 20% of New Yorkers are living below the federal poverty line. We don't have enough money for our schools. We see our subway system deteriorating before our eyes, and there is too much luxury overdevelopment happening in New York City. Marvin, I'm the only person who's potentially running for mayor that is not taking money from real estate developers. I'm not taking more than $250 a person, even though the legal limit is $2,000. I'm not taking money from people who work at lobbying firms. We need to have a mayor that has a vision for New York City, the future of New York City, and that is separate from these special interests that have not always had neighborhoods' best interests in mind. And that is going to be a key crux of my campaign.
A mayor with a vision.
Yes, that's
Which leads
right.
me to ask a question about your chilly relationship with the current mayor, de Blasio. How would you rate him? How would you rate his mayoralty?
Oh, you know, I think it's too early to say that. I think that there have been some highlights, and those highlights have been universal pre-K, which has been a really important thing. Last year, we saw the lowest number of homicides, 295, in basically the history of the city of New York since 1951. So there are some good things that the mayor can talk about. But his legacy, his overall record, he's going to have to talk about that. I have an open line of communication. I have a good working relationship with him, as any speaker needs to have with any mayor. You know, we don't agree on everything. I'm an independent guy. The council's an independent body. When we don't agree, I don't make it personal. I make it about the merits of the argument. But, you know, I would do some things differently. I think we have a homelessness crisis that we really need to get under control, and we need to rein in the overdevelopment of New York City.
Fair enough. Corey Johnson, good Good to have you on the program.
Thanks, Marvin.
I hope
Happy holidays.
I hope you get back here
Thank
soon
you.
again. Okay.
Happy holidays.
And that'll do it for our broadcast for this week. If you have any comments or wish to see the broadcast again, log on to our website at pix11.com/newscloseup. Up next, Greta Van Susteren and Full Court Press. I'm Marvin Scott. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everyone.